everyone, welcome to my channel. I have got this super textured embossed Christmas card today that I wanted to share with you. I started off, I used the Santa image from the Gerda Steiner Designs Peking Friends stamp set, but really any of those images would be adorable on this card. I sketched in a beard and then went over it with a Copic multi-liner pen and erased my pencil marks, which I didn't show. Now I've put in the Copic coloring, but if you don't want to see it, skip ahead to just before the 6-minute mark and join me there. Otherwise, I'll show you how I did this little Santa. I'll list below the markers that I used, but I just started off here with the E000 just to give his face a bit of color. And then to make the cheeks, I used this R00 and just kind of drew in cheek marks. And for his nose as well. Now, you can see I went out of the lines there. I am the worst. You can see my Zero colorless blender has washi tape on it. That's because I have to find it the most often of any marker in my collection, and I have a lot of markers. So I've gone back in there with the R20 and just deepened up that pink a little bit, and I'm blending it out a bit with that R00 again. And on his nose, I just went over again with the E000. And that's really all I did for his face. Now, I find that if I do the red first, which I am drawn to, I want to put the red in, but then red is terrible. Every time I touch it with my marker, I find I'm getting pink everywhere else. So I didn't want a pink beard or face, so I have left the red to last, and I'm doing all the gray bits and his mitts. So here I'm just putting down some C1 just to give him a few lines. I did some wavy lines for his beard, and I'm putting in a few shadows now with the C2, just roughly sketching in wavy lines the way a beard would sort of look. And I did a little of this in his mustache, just under his nose there. And then to soften those out, I use the C0, and it just sort of blends those lines a little bit so they're not quite as stark, some of those wavy lines. And then for the fur on his hat, I'm using the C2 just to give a bit of shadow at the bottom here. I know that looks dark, but it ends up being okay. And I blended that out with the C0 as well. I've sped up my coloring for you here, so I wish I colored this fast, but I really don't. So just take your time and, go as fast as you can go. And I realized at this point, oh, yeah, I forgot his eyebrows. Oh, I guess not at this point. It does come. I do fill those eyebrows in. So I'm doing N6 for his mitts here, and I left a little highlight on these. You don't have to. You could easily add in a white highlight if you wanted it afterwards, or just don't put that in at all. So I only used the N6 on these mittens, and then I sort of tried to darken up around where his thumbs are in the back of his hand a little bit, but not too much. You can't really see too much depth in that. And there's where I remembered the eyebrows. So C1 for those, just to get the color in. And so now I'm on to the red. So red 39 is the deeper color that I've got, and I quite like it. It is a bit tough to blend sometimes with the middle red that I used, which was R29, but I like the depth that it gives. So just going in, behind the fur there where it would be a little bit darker, and a bit of a shadow there, and then at the back of the hat there. I do like to go from darker to light. I just find otherwise I overdo the shadows somehow. So I try hard not to overdo them here and to leave room for the other colors, but I know lots of people that go light to dark, and I think it's whatever suits you the best. So I've left a little light there for a highlight or a little white area, and I'll do the same back here. And I'm just kind of quickly putting down that red 29. And then for the highlight, I've got this R35, which is a much lighter one. It doesn't really look white or anything, but it's much lighter in real life. It's much lighter than this R29. And if you wanted, of course, you could always put a little white highlight with a gel pen, which would be cute too. And that's all the coloring I did for this little guy. I just used a black glaze pen now for his eyes, just to give them a bit of a gloss to them. And that's my Santa. So I did fussy cut him out completely, right along the lines. I didn't leave a white border or anything. And because I didn't leave a white border, I took my black memento marker and I'm just going around the edges of this because it just seems to finish it off a little bit more. Now, I have this joy die. I was given it secondhand years ago. I don't know who made it, but any joy die or letters, alphabet letters would work. And I didn't have a good green cardstock that I liked, so I just went with a Copic marker over mine. And then you can see I did some partial die cutting on the O just to extend it a little bit. So if you use another die, well, you probably would because I don't know who this one is from. Just try and extend the O if you need it to make Santa fit. Now, I wanted some more dimension on that joy, and so I taped it down. I taped the dot down with masking tape, and I just used an anti-static powder on that masking tape. And I'm using that glitter from Michaels and Lawn Fawn's clear embossing powder. And I'm going to, this is an ink blending tool with Versamark ink on it just to get it sticky. And I will then emboss this with the clear embossing powder, which you'll see me do here. So I just sprinkled that on all over that, shook off the excess. And then I heat set this, and while it's still warm, so I went over it again, while it's still warm, I sprinkled on the glitter just to give it that shine, I guess, for Christmas. Don't blow your heat tool on the glitter as you're spreading it. That would be my tip to you. So here, this is what inspired this card. I reorganized all my embossing folders, and in doing so, I made these tags and I just embossed them all, and I just thought they were so pretty and such a waste because I so rarely dig them out, but I thought maybe if I had them organized, I'd use them. So I've cut these 1 1/4 inch squares. I did 12 of them, and I just placed them in my embossing folders where I wanted them to go and ran them through, and you get these really pretty little squares that I just did a whole bunch of different ones, as you can see, and it just adds so much interest. I put double-sided tape on the back of them. Now I have to admit that I thought I would use my T ruler for this, but because of that double-sided tape, it was very hard to line up. I thought of doing it with washi tape and putting a strip down, but that also was hard because you're looking down and it's 3D. So in the end, I just went down that left-hand side. I spaced them out as best I could. Went down the left-hand side, and then I was just not pushing down too hard to start. Went across the top, and then I filled the rest in. And it's not perfect, but a lot of it's covered by this joy anyway. And it's just to give that texture. So here I'm figuring out where I want my Santa. I put them on, and I'm just marking where the O goes so I can put the glue down there. And I used glue to attach this whole joy. Because of all that texture, I didn't think the tape would be the best. I thought glue would work better. So now I am putting back the joy, sticking it down. And just making sure he's stuck. Now, You'll see here it didn't stick all that well. I should have held it on in place with my fingers a little bit longer, I think, but I ended up putting it under acrylic blocks. And I really think that you should let it set up really well. You can see how it's lifting there. So I pushed it back down and put these blocks under it, and then stuck the circle on. The tittle, I think it's called. I'm not sure. So then I set all that aside to dry. And I used this Joy to the World stamp from MFT's Biddy Holiday Wishes. And I just trimmed off the Joy because I already had it. Now, it didn't sit quite flat because of all the texture, I think, and the embossing on the Y. So this was my answer to that. I just took 2 scraps of cardstock, glued them together, and cut it in half. And then this will go on the ends of that little sentiment strip, just to give it a bit more dimension. It wasn't enough dimension for foam tape, but it needed a little something to keep it all fairly flat. So this seemed to work. And then I glued everything together and placed that up on the Y. And then put that under blocks. Now here I've added these little embellishments. I don't have red and green glossy dots like that, so I made my own. I have some foil cardstock that I paper punched with different punches and covered with clear glossy accents. And they turned out fairly well. There's a few air bubbles in some of them, but really they're kind of fun on a Christmas card. So I love all that texture that you see there. And you can see the shine from the embossing on the Joy. Now, I also made the reindeer, and I used some red glitter stock for his. But it just shows you all those little animals could be so fun coming out of that. Oh. So I really hope that you guys will give this a try. It's a lot of fun and a great way to use up those embossing folders. Thanks so much for joining me, everyone. Hope to see you again next time.